Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of Buzznerd, where we bring you all the news on comics, TV, music, and everything else that I was interested in the past week. Without further ado, let's get started. Earlier this week, I went to see the new Godzilla movie by Gareth Edwards. This was a film that I have been looking forward to for pretty much ever since Edwards was announced, and probably before that when they just announced Lionsgate was making one. I have been a huge Godzilla nerd since I was a kid, and, to hear that they were going to make up for the American debacle of '98, and they were getting a director, Edwards, who had, clearly a passion for the genre, just got me so excited. First of all, the thing that was the most wrong with the last Godzilla movie was that there was no other monster for him to fight, and he was just a poor little reptilian radioactive monster caught in the city that couldn't be understood while he was destroying the Chrysler building, and ended up getting killed before giving birth to a bunch of velociraptor-ish babies, and then getting killed again at the end somehow because he lived through the first death. Now, Godzilla is always about, destroying stuff and being dangerous, and this movie got it right where, the society wanted to kill him as well as the new monsters. But the cool thing about Godzilla that's different than King Kong and anything else in the genre is that he's also just the badass king of the food chain, and he just wants to come in and clear the house on the monsters or show humanity a lesson and then leave. He shouldn't be killed. It shouldn't just be something you shed a tear for at the end in any sense. Or, let's be honest, nobody watches a monster movie because they're cheering for the humans or the army guys to, just defeat him easily. So this one really got it. Edwards, understood that Godzilla's audience wanted to see him in a heroic light to some degree, and Godzilla got to be. He was challenged by those other monsters, but in the end he won the day. And they called back to a lot of things that made Godzilla great. And something else I really credit Edwards and his team for was going back to a lot of the things that made Godzilla great in the first place. The original Japanese design was clearly an influence of the new beast, and they also had that textbook forgetting of Godzilla's fire-breathing powers until it was dramatically necessary when he'd taken a beating, and it was awesome when he did it. They had the light-up spikes and everything. Something that I didn't like about the movie was I thought that Bryan Cranston was kind of overplayed in the commercials, and then he kind of disappears a little bit too soon. Also, Aaron Tyler Johnson, Kick-Ass, and a few other films. Good a young actor, but I don't go to Godzilla movies to see the army guy and his girlfriend talk on the phone, and felt like we were just spending a little bit too much time with them. Granted, though, his girlfriend Elizabeth Olsen, who is going to be Scarlet Witch in the upcoming Avengers movie, did very well in the role. Very watchable. Again, Ken Watanabe played great with his philosophical meandering scientist role, talking about how Godzilla is the balance of nature and such, and, waxing eloquent enough to make Godzilla's role in the society and the reality of the film kind of make sense. But in the end, we got to see everything that, you really want. You see some cool monsters get killed by Godzilla and some destroyed buildings, etc., etc. And they built such a good foundation for the future. The sequel now has, the possibility of society understanding that Godzilla helped them, but they still want to kill him. Maybe he'll wake up and destroy some buildings. We'll get to see Japan running around, and then another monster appears, so maybe they shouldn't kill him. And, just all the busy work has been done. And the fact that this movie blew up the box office means that the sequel is going to get fast-tracked, and there's going to be money and support. So, very happy to see that. So apparently someone at Lucasfilm saw and loved Godzilla as much as I did, because Gareth Edwards has been recently announced as the director for the planned standalone spin-off movies that are going to be about Boba Fett. In a post on the official Star Wars site, Edwards said that he could not be more excited and honored to go on this mission with Lucasfilms and join the Rebel Alliance, although he's actually going to be a Mandalorian with Boba Fett, so whatever. But again, it's very cool that they got a fan favorite and somebody with a lot of passion to cover such an interesting character and the coolest action figure of all time, in my opinion. He's going to be working with a screenplay written by Gary Whitta, writer of The Book of Eli, a very underrated film in my opinion. And it just could be a very interesting Western-style film. Again, it's Boba Fett's long-term longevity and popularity has been attributed to the mystery of his character, kind of like the man with no name of the old Western serials. And there's just a lot to play with, whatever time period they choose to do it with. There's just a strong fan base, and it's a cool world to play in, and I think that based on his work with Godzilla and monsters, I have high hopes that Edwards is going to knock this one out of the park. Another big thing that happened this week was Forever Evil finally finished up. Who knew how relevant this cover was going to be? It was supposed to be when the villains took over in a world without heroes, and that is exactly what happened. Throughout the series, with the Justice League gone, with the exception of Nightwing, who gets taken care of in the first issue as a prisoner, the villains have to take over, and you start to see that they're not, 100% evil. There's a little bit more depth to them. The Flash Rogues Gallery leads the way with, refusing to follow the new society's will by killing innocent bystanders. And then Lex Luthor is, of course, not cool with being controlled or being under anyone else's power. And by the end of the series, with Batman and Catwoman now free and helping, and Cyborg sort of helping as well, they go on the side of the Angels, and the Justice Society, the evil one, is taken care of. But we're left with a far more interesting set of characters for our villains, as their humanity has been explored. And they do a lot of things with Lex Luthor that makes me think he's going to be an interesting character for years to come. He figured out Bruce Wayne's identity, but he hasn't said anything about it. He mourns his creation, Bizarro's death. He is no longer going after Superman, courtesy of Justice League 30, Wonder Woman getting him in the lasso of truth, so we're pretty sure that's true. Of course, you can always turn back on that. I mean, he is Lex Luthor, so that'll be the fun play. But once again, like Superior Spider-Man, taking a long-term villain and exploring his humanity in a sense that is not just pure evil, makes for a far more interesting character and dynamic, because you really don't know what's going to happen. And it seems like that is what the direction they're going to go with Lex Luthor now. And the final fate of Nightwing was decided. He did survive, having his heart stopped by Lex Luthor, but then again, how many times have we seen that happen in all of media? He now can no longer be Nightwing, but he will be a secret agent called Grayson in a sort of pseudo-American CIA story called Grayson, coming out this summer, which I have high hopes for, and you can read more about my thoughts on shawnsthoughts.blogspot.com. We found out the origin of the decision for him to go into hiding and pretend to be dead with everybody except Batman, because Batman told him to. We'll get back to that, I guess, at later issues. But again, the only surviving members of the evil society that they built very well were Ultraman, who is now powerless because of the new sun, Owlman, who is now still around and could be an interesting plot point for Grayson and Batman in the future, and Superwoman, the evil Wonder Woman, who has no originality in her name, is impregnated with Alexander Luthor, his child, and is very depressed and not sharing information about what destroyed the world. So a lot more to play with, but the body of the story is over. The Justice League is back in action. They changed some characters around, and altogether this is the first big event for the new DCU, and I think that it's an extremely successful one. It was well written from the start. They created a captivating question with Nightwing's mortality, a character that everybody really cares about, or at least I do, in question the entire time. They created an interesting villain. They brought up their supervillains by putting them in a heroic role. They didn't rely too heavily on the Justice League characters doing the same old thing. Superman wasn't really in the story. So all in all, just a great job by Finch, Jeff Johns, and company. Highly recommend the paperback collection for those who haven't checked it out yet. Some interesting music that I highly recommend to you for this week is Upside Down Mountain by Connor Oberst. He uses the textbook strum-heavy Americana mixed with meandering lyrics about the big questions of life, as you would expect, but as someone who loves alt country, he just adds that certain sense of hopefulness this time around that only 30-something-year-old married dudes can seem to do these days, like Jeff Tweedy. But he, really hits a lot of good notes. There's some standout songs. I highly recommend Artifact 1 to start off with. It's not completely depressing, as a lot of his work can sometimes be attributed to be. It's, kind of got that twinge of melancholy hopefulness, again, that I look for in music. You can read my review of the album on my webpage. I also checked out Green Day's new album, which is basically just a collection of everything they've done recently, but without some of the overproduced studio elements. The bassist came out with a couple cool comments. It's pretty good gym music, gotta say, but I definitely put over Oberst before them. Anyways, in the coming week, I also have X-Men Days of Our Future Past to look forward to, which is getting rave reviews and being compared to the Avengers and called the greatest superhero movie of all time by various media outlets, so something to think about. And we also have Ultimate Spider-Man, which had a huge bombshell last issue, and I don't want to spoil it here, but I have high hopes for it. As a longtime fan that is a fan of Miles Morales, but always wanted to see a little bit more of the old canon come back. And we also have upcoming, not next week, for Sandman Overture 3. If you haven't read the first issues and you're a Sandman fan, I don't know what you're doing, but incredible. And great to see that back. I have so much to talk about. Look out for a new blog post on that soon. That'll do it for this week's edition of Buzznerd. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to talking nerd with all y'all in the coming weeks. Take it easy.